Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into fascinating topics, extracting the insights you need to be truly well-informed. Today, we're unearthing a really remarkable chapter in maritime history. It's a story of lost ships, sunken treasures, sure, but they reveal these profound insights into ancient engineering and global trade.
Yeah, it's fascinating. For centuries, much of the true ingenuity behind Chinese shipbuilding was, well, for many, a bit of a mystery, often pieced together from, fragmented foreign accounts.
Exactly.
And the allure of lost ships, sunken treasures. It's universal, isn't it? Sparks the imagination, tales of adventure. But what's truly profound about these discoveries isn't just the glittering gold, though that's exciting too. It's the sheer scientific and historical insight they offer.
Right.
They're like time capsules, you see, meticulously preserved by the ocean, and they can completely rewrite our understanding of global trade, ancient engineering, even cultural exchange.
Absolutely. So, our mission today is to embark on this extraordinary journey into the rich world of Chinese maritime archaeology. We're going to unpack the incredible stories told by two pivotal discoveries: the Song Dynasty Quanzhou ship and the Bai Jiao 1 wreck. And these aren't just, remnants of old boats. They're extraordinary windows into ancient Chinese ingenuity, the sprawling global trade networks they built, and importantly, the daily lives of the sailors and merchants who braved the open seas. We'll look at the ships themselves, the goods they carried, and those bustling port cities that launched them on their epic voyages.
And what makes this deep dive particularly compelling, I think, is that our primary source material isn't some dusty ancient text. It's actually an interim report from a joint Australian-Chinese archaeological project.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, this collaboration really highlights the detailed, meticulous research involved and the shared global effort to piece together this vital history. It shows us how modern science connects us directly to the past.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting with a true marvel. The Quanzhou ship, a window into Song Dynasty engineering. What's the story behind its discovery? How did they find it?
Well, its discovery was an absolute game changer, and it revealed itself almost by accident, really.
Aye.
The Quanzhou ship literally turned up in 1973. They weren't on some grand treasure hunt or anything. Workers were simply dredging a canal near Quanzhou in Fujian province, and, well, boom, they stumbled upon this incredible piece of history.
Just like that. Wow.
Just like that. The subsequent excavation, carried out meticulously between June and August of 1974, allowed for its eventual reconstruction. It's now housed in the Museum of Overseas Communication History there.
And the significance of this. It isn't just about finding an old ship, right? This one's special.
Oh, hugely special. This vessel, carbon dated to around 1277 AD, is considered an extremely important archaeological find.
That's key.
Absolutely. Before this, systematic study and archaeological information on the development of Asian shipbuilding, well, they were seriously lacking. This one discovery filled massive, glaring gaps in our knowledge. It offered concrete evidence where before we only had, speculation or fragmented accounts.
This really raises an important point about how we historically understood Chinese shipbuilding. Because for a long time, there was this noticeable lack of internal documentation from China itself on ship design and construction, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you compare it with, say, European traditions.
That's exactly right. You had detailed treatises and drawings available from European traditions, but less so, or at least less that survived or was known in the West from China. This led to certain assumptions and, frankly, blind spots in Western scholarship for a long time.
Right. Some early theories, like Hornell's, I remember reading, even suggested that the concept for these large vessels capable of transoceanic voyages might have originated from humble bamboo rafts you still find in South China.
Exactly. And even the monumental work, Science and Civilization of China by Joseph Needham, truly groundbreaking stuff, but it faced its own challenges because the archaeological data just wasn't there when he was writing large parts of it. Yeah, Needham's work, while encyclopedic and incredibly important, was penned at a time when this kind of archaeological information was just starting to emerge. He notably expressed regret, didn't he, that Chinese naval architecture never found its systematizing scholar.
That's quite a statement.
It is. And he also grappled with the concept of keeled vessels in China. At times, he seemed to confuse them with strengthening whales on the side of the hull. This initial confusion really highlights the profound impact that later archaeological evidence, like from the Quanzhou ship, would have. It provided crucial clarity and fundamentally reshaped our understanding.
So building on Needham's early challenges then, How did the archaeological evidence from Quanzhou, combined with maybe rereading historical accounts, finally clarify the picture? What fundamental distinctions did it reveal?
Well, it really solidified a critical distinction between northern and southern Chinese shipbuilding traditions. That became much clearer.
Okay.
In the north, you had these large, flat-bottomed vessels. They were perfectly suited for riverine and coastal trade in shallower waters. Think of the Jiangsu or Patili freighters Needham often referenced. They were designed for heavy cargo in relatively calm, protected environments.
Makes sense.
But in the southern regions, particularly Fujian and Guangdong, where open ocean voyages were the norm, they built keeled, V-shaped ships. These vessels had what the Chinese called dragon spines, or longu.
Longu, dragon spines. Exactly. And these function very much like keels in the European sense.
Yeah.
They provided stability, allowed for better handling in rough seas. There's even a historical commentary by Ji Zhanren mentioning how these longu could get stuck in the sand. That clearly indicates it was a deep central strengthening member, not just some superficial whale on the side. So if I'm hearing you right, this isn't just a technical detail. It's a fundamental breakthrough in understanding. It confirms that southern Chinese shipbuilders had independently developed this crucial marine engineering innovation, the keel, which was long thought perhaps unique to European traditions.
Precisely.
That quite literally rewrites a chapter in global naval architecture, doesn't it? It corrects that earlier misunderstanding, showcasing a distinct and really advanced Chinese maritime tradition.
Exactly. It's a testament to their independent innovation, specifically tailored to the demanding conditions of open ocean sailing. This deep central spine was absolutely critical for stability and directional control out there in the South China Sea.
Fascinating. Yeah. So the internal evidence from the Quanzhou ship began to fill these huge gaps. But what happens when we triangulate that with external accounts? Because as you mentioned, some of the most vivid descriptions of these early Chinese vessels actually come from foreign observers. What did they see?
That's a brilliant way to put it, triangulate. Foreign accounts, particularly from really observant travelers like Marco Polo, are invaluable. They offer an outsider's fresh perspective, often noting details that locals might just take for granted.
Right.
Marco Polo's chronicle from his time in China between 1275 and 1292 provides truly unique observations about the construction of large Chinese merchant ships. His words have given us insights that archaeology can now confirm with incredible precision.
What aspects of Chinese shipbuilding particularly caught his eye? What did he write about?
He described their merchant ships as being typically built of fir or pine, and he noted their innovative internal structure, these 60 little rooms or cabins for merchants. These provided both privacy and crucially secure storage for their goods on a long voyage.
Smart.
Very. He explicitly detailed their steering mechanism as one good sweep or helm, which in the vulgar tongue is called a rudder. That phrase is remarkable. It's one of the earliest recordings of that word rudder in European context, suggesting it might have been a novel concept to him. He also mentioned multiple masts and, crucially, 13 holds, that is, divisions on the inside. These divisions, made with strong planks fitted together, led to his famous assertion about watertight bulkheads. He stated that if a ship was staved in, the water would be confined to one hold, allowing for repair and preventing the entire ship from sinking.
That detail about the watertight compartments is legendary, isn't it? And he didn't stop there, did he? Polo also observed their planking and caulking methods.
That's right. He detailed the practice of double and sometimes even triple planking. Basically, new boards were nailed over existing ones during repairs or maybe even initial construction. Over time, he noted, this could lead to ships with as many as 6 layers of planking before being decommissioned. Imagine, essentially creating this incredibly robust, multi-layered hull.
6 layers.
Yeah. And for caulking, sealing the gaps, they didn't use pitch, which was common in Europe back then. They used a distinct mixture of lime, chop temp, and tung oil, a locally abundant resource in southern China.
To put that into broader context, how do these accounts compare with other foreign observations of the time? Was anyone else seeing similar things?
Well, to briefly compare, Ibn Battuta, the great Moroccan traveler who was in China around 1347, provided a slightly different but complementary snapshot.
Okay.
He noted distinct classes of Chinese vessels. He called them chunks, zaws, and kakams. He described their multi-deck structures and truly massive crews. Sometimes up to 1,000 men, he said, including 600 sailors and 400 men-at-arms. That gives you a sense of the sheer scale of their maritime operations.
1,000 men.
Isn't it? He also recorded where they were built, naming Zaytun, which we know is Quanzhou, as a key port, and Sinkalan, which is thought to be Guangzhou. His account also noted the use of very thick planks for bulkheads, secured longitudinally and transversely with large nails, each 3 ells in length. And he observed that the lower deck was fitted before the upper works. So these detailed, if sometimes maybe slightly awestruck, observations from travelers like Polo and Batuta really underscore the advanced nature and impressive scale of Chinese maritime technology at the time.
Okay, now let's dive into the actual engineering marvels of the Quanzhou ship itself, based on the archaeology. Its keel, for instance, sounds particularly robust from the report.
Oh, it was a fascinating piece of engineering. The keel was constructed in 3 distinct parts. The forward and aft sections were made from pine, likely chosen for its strength and flexibility, but the central portion was made from camphor wood, which is known for its durability and resistance to rot and marine borers. Smart choice.
Makes sense.
This substantial central spine was an impressive 12.57 meters long, about 420 millimeters wide, and 270 millimeters deep. What's also notable are the upward-sloping fore and aft extensions of this keel, angled at 27 and 35 degrees respectively.
What does that slope suggest?
It suggests a strongly raked stem at the front and probably a transom stern at the back. It's a design that would have offered specific handling characteristics, likely influencing how the ship cut through the water, turned efficiently, and maybe resisted pounding in heavy seas.
And a detail that really stands out, blending the practical engineering with, well, cultural belief, is this good luck bao Songkong. Can you tell us more about these holes of longevity?
Ah, yes. This is truly a beautiful blend of engineering and tradition. It's wonderful. In the keel scarf joints, these are the critical connections joining the different sections of the keel together.
Right, like knuckles.
Exactly. They embedded what were called holes of longevity, or bao Songkong. In the forward scarf joint, they found 7 iron coins. These are believed to represent the Ursa Major constellation, the Big Dipper, a crucial celestial guide for sailors. Along with those coins was a copper alloy mirror representing the moon.
And in the aft scarf.
In the aft scarf, there were 13 coins and another mirror. This fascinating tradition carries deep Taoist significance. It was intended to bring good luck and fair winds for the journey, with the mirror thought to reflect light and ensure a safe passage.
That's incredible. Is this just an ancient thing?
Well, what's amazing is it's not just ancient history. This tradition, perhaps using nails to represent stars and a silver coin for the moon, is actually still practiced in traditional shipbuilding today in some parts of China.
That's such a human detail, isn't it? Amidst all the precise engineering and, rigorous construction, there's this profound layer of belief, of hoping for good fortune on the vast, unpredictable ocean.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder, did they ever really believe a few coins and a mirror could defy a typhoon?
Well, perhaps not defy it entirely in a literal sense, but it speaks volumes about a fundamental human need for reassurance, for a connection to the spiritual when facing the unknown, the immense power of the sea. It's a reminder that even the most advanced engineering back then was underpinned by a deep cultural fabric, a way of engaging with the powerful forces of nature. They were seeking every advantage, practical and spiritual.
Beyond the keel, then, the hull construction itself sounds incredibly advanced. What can you tell us about the planking?
The Quanzhou ship truly pushed the boundaries of hull construction for its time. They used layers of cedar planking, sometimes 2, even 3 layers deep, employing this really sophisticated mix of building styles.
A mix. How so?
Imagine carvel planking, where planks meet edge to edge for a smooth surface, combined with clinker, where they overlap like roof tiles for strength and water tightness. But they didn't just overlap them simply. They refined this with something called a rabbeted clinker seam. Yeah, it's where a groove, or a rabbet, was precisely cut into the upper plank's inner edge. This allowed the overlapping plank to sit partially in that groove, reducing the step thickness on the outside and creating a tighter, neater fit. It would improve hydrodynamic efficiency, too.
Clever.
Very. The outer planking, about 50 millimeters thick, was carvel joined edge to edge and then irregularly skew-nailed at roughly 200 millimeter intervals through to the inner planking. And crucially, they also used iron guazhou, or cramps.
Cramps, like metal brackets.
Exactly. L-shaped metal brackets recessed into the bulkheads and planks. They served as crucial fasteners, locking the planks to the internal bulkheads for added structural integrity. This wasn't just building a boat, it was engineering a remarkably resilient, seaworthy vessel that could handle epic transoceanic voyages.
This brings us back to one of the most debated aspects of Chinese shipbuilding, those watertight compartments Marco Polo described. He talked about watertight bulkheads. But then we have this archaeological evidence that seems, well, to contradict that. How do we reconcile this?
This raises an important question, definitely. And it's a fantastic example of how archaeology often challenges, or at least refines, long-held interpretations of historical texts. Marco Polo famously described these Chinese ships with watertight bulkheads capable of isolating leaks if the hull was breached.
Right, the safety feature.
Exactly. However, the archaeological evidence from every excavated Asian vessel with bulkheads found so far, including the Quanzhou ship, shows limbers, basically, holes at the very base of these bulkheads. These were clearly designed to allow water to flow freely between compartments.
So why the discrepancy? Was Polo just wrong or exaggerating, or is there a more nuanced explanation?
It seems to be more nuanced. The prevailing interpretation now is that these limbers allowed normal bilge water, the inevitable small leaks and seepage, to flow to the lowest point of the hull for easy bailing or pumping. That was essential for routine maintenance.
Okay, that makes
But in an emergency, evidence from other shipwrecks, like the Pattaya shipwreck found off Thailand, suggests there might have been ingenious longitudinal partitions, maybe running fore and aft. These could have created central access corridors or channels leading to these limber holes.
Ah, so you could get to them.
Precisely, allowing the crew to quickly block the limbers, maybe with plugs or wedges in the event of a serious breach. That would effectively confine the incoming water to a single compartment, just as Polo described. So they weren't permanently watertight, but could be made so when disaster struck. A really clever, adaptable safety mechanism.
That's a brilliant solution. Very practical. And what about the bulkheads themselves and the framing? How were they built?
The bulkheads were robust structures built from planks about 80 millimeters thick, skew-nailed together. Their overall thickness varied between 7 and 10 centimeters. Interestingly, they weren't strongly fastened directly to the keel, which suggests they were likely installed after the main plank shell of the hull was largely complete.
And the framing?
What's fascinating here is the half-frame arrangement. Proper frames, like you might see in European ships, weren't continuous ribs. Instead, you had frames attached on the aft side of some bulkheads and the forward side of others. It's almost as if they were positioned to brace against the dominant direction of forces or stresses on the hull in different sections.
So these frames weren't purely for structural support of the hull planks in the European sense, but maybe more to stabilize the bulkheads themselves.
That seems to be the thinking, yes. The large limbers we discussed, measuring about 250 millimeters high and 90 millimeters wide, underline their primary purpose for water flow. And the fact that the frames were nailed to the bulkheads but not strongly fastened to the keel suggests their main role was probably to prevent the bulkheads from shifting fore and aft.
Why would that matter so much?
Because if the bulkheads moved, it would loosen those crucial iron Guoju cramps, holding the planks to them, potentially compromising the integrity of the whole watertight system. It shows a very different yet highly effective approach to internal strengthening compared to contemporaneous European designs. It's all interconnected.
Moving up the ship then, the mast steps are quite intriguing. The report notes they appear relatively light, designed for a mast diameter of around 375 millimeters on a vessel with a beam, a width of 10 meters. This suggests a light vessel with a light rig. What does that imply about the ship's capabilities or maybe its typical routes?
That's a really perceptive point based on the evidence. If you connect this to the bigger picture, traditional European ships and even later Chinese vessels of a similar size would typically have had much larger, heavier masts. They needed to handle greater sail area and the associated stresses. If you apply traditional formulas for calculating mast diameter based on the beam or hull length, the Quanzhou ship's mast should have been significantly thicker. The fact that they weren't strongly implies this vessel was likely designed for carrying lighter, perhaps higher value cargo. It suggests a focus on agility, maybe with a shallower draft.
Allowing it into shallower waters.
Exactly, allowing it to navigate coastal areas and river mouths more easily, rather than being a deep, capacious hull designed purely for pushing through the open ocean at maximum load. The low pivot height for lowering the mast, found at only 2.75 meters above the keel, also supports the idea of a relatively shallow hold. The hold probably wasn't much deeper than that pivot point, again pointing towards a more specialized, possibly coastal or regional trading role, rather than just a bulk carrier.
And what about keeping all that water out? The Quanzhou ship employed extensive caulking and sealing techniques. You mentioned the tung oil earlier.
Indeed, they were masters of sealing. The hull joints, the seams between planks, and even the layers between the double or triple planking were extensively sealed with lime putty. This was a carefully prepared mixture of tung oil, fine jute fibers, and rainy caulking material.
And the Quanzhou connection.
Well, it's no coincidence that Quanzhou was historically known as Sitong Harbor or Tung Harbor. It was named specifically because of the abundance of tung oil trees in the region. This provided a readily available, highly effective natural sealant for their shipbuilding industry. The analysis of the putty found on the wreck, containing these fine jute fibers thoroughly pounded in, really reveals the sophistication of their sealing methods.
Any other interesting details from the analysis?
Yes, actually. A lipid analysis suggested that some of the lime might also have been applied as an aqueous slurry, like a thin paste. This is a technique still seen today in northern Vietnam for sealing woven basket boats. It showcases both potentially advanced material science for the time and perhaps regional variations in practice, highlighting a deep understanding of local resources and how best to use them.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the evidence that the Quanzhou ship might have undergone a partial salvage operation back in the Song Dynasty itself. What makes archaeologists think this?
This theory is really compelling, based on some specific clues in the wreckage. Some of those iron guaju brackets we talked about, the ones high up in the remaining planking, appear to have been deliberately chiseled out. And there's even an axe-hacked hole found in the upper part of the hull.
Suggesting deliberate removal.
Exactly. It strongly suggests that the upper parts of the ship were intentionally removed shortly after it sank, maybe even while part of it was still accessible. This theory is really supported by the excellent preservation of the remaining lower hull.
How so?
Well, if the upper sections had simply degraded naturally over centuries underwater, you'd expect a gradual transition of preservation quality. The topmost surviving planks should be the most decayed. But instead, the uppermost surviving planks are in remarkably good condition. This hints that they were already buried and protected in the anaerobic silt when the upper works were deliberately salvaged.
I see.
It's a compelling detail that speaks to the immediate aftermath of its sinking. Perhaps it was done by the ship's owners themselves or local salvors, desperate to recover valuable timber, fittings, or maybe even accessible cargo.
So after all that incredible engineering and the story of its sinking and possible salvage, what was this ship actually carrying? What do the artifacts tell us about the lives of its crew and merchants?
A peek into the ship's life through its excavated artifacts reveals a truly vibrant story of commerce and daily existence on board. The main cargo included a substantial amount, 2,300 kilograms of fragrant woods like lakewood, sandalwood, and aloes. These were all luxury items in high demand across Asia and beyond.
What else?
Beyond that, we find pepper, areca nuts, frankincense, cinnabar used for pigment and medicine, tortoiseshell, and even ambergris. Now, the ambergris was scientifically identified as originating from Somalia.
Somalia?
Yes. That single detail alone points to incredibly far-reaching trade routes connecting Song Dynasty China directly to the distant shores of East Africa. It's tangible proof of that connection.
Beyond the bulk cargo, there were personal effects and provisions too, right?
Yeah.
Things that truly bring the human element to life. It's not just goods, but glimpses into the people themselves.
Exactly. That's often the most evocative part of these finds. Imagine finding 96 wooden tablets. Some were clearly cargo labels, detailing specific shipments, maybe with destinations or owner marks, and 504 copper coins dating right up to 1274 AD were found hidden in various compartments. These coins are invaluable for confirming the date of the wreck.
What else?
There were 56 pieces of ceramics, mostly everyday bowls and containers, a bamboo ruler, 7 rattan hats, lengths of rope, a wooden hammer, and even chessmen, including a red horse piece, a black general piece, things like that. These weren't just objects, they were the tools, the leisure items, the personal possessions of those on board.
And even more intimate details emerged, didn't they?
Yes, we also find fragments of a broken writing board. It tantalizingly suggests it might have borne a poem, or perhaps some personal message or calculation, now lost to time. There were also coral and glass beads, maybe for trade, maybe personal adornment, the presence of over 2,000 shells, likely gathered for food or perhaps used as supplemental ballast.
And organic remains, too.
Absolutely. Organic remains like coconut shell fragments, pits from peaches, plums, strawberries, apricots, olives, and lychees, plus animal bones identified from rats, inevitable shipmates, dogs, goats, pigs, fish, and birds. All this paints such a vivid picture. It tells us about the diet of the crew, the possible presence of ship animals for companionship or food, and the diverse provisions needed for a long voyage. It really gives us a sense of a micro-society living and working together on the open sea.
Now that we've journeyed through the incredible engineering and the personal stories locked within the Quanzhou ship, let's zoom out a bit and place it within the larger context of medieval maritime trade. Section 2. Quanzhou and Bai Jiao, one hubs of medieval maritime trade. We've already mentioned Quanzhou's importance, but just how significant was it truly?
Quanzhou itself was nothing short of a global trading powerhouse during its peak. During the Song and Yuan dynasties, it ascended to become one of China's, and indeed one of the world's, greatest ports. We mentioned its name, Xitong Harbor, or Tung Harbor, famously named after those tung oil trees vital for shipbuilding.
And the city's growth was phenomenal, right?
Absolutely. The economic context of Quanzhou was incredibly advanced for its time. Records show that by the Yuan Feng years, that's between 1078 and 1085 AD, it boasted a staggering population of around 200,000 people. That made it one of China's 6 largest cities at the time.
What fueled that growth?
Well, this population boom was partly fueled by Han refugees fleeing northern wars. They brought with them advanced science, technology, and commercial acumen, further propelling Quanzhou's rapid economic development. It became a true melting pot of innovation and enterprise.
What are the economic engines that powered this powerhouse? What was it built on?
Its economy really rested on 3 robust pillars. Firstly, highly productive agriculture in the hinterland yielded crucial exports like rice, the famous Oolong tea, and raw materials for textiles such as silk, ramie, and jute.
Okay.
Secondly, a major ceramics industry flourished. Archaeologists have identified over 110 Song or Yuan period kiln sites just in the vicinity of Quanzhou. Most of their sophisticated production bowls, jars, vases was destined for export across Asia and even further afield.
And finally, Pillar 3 must be shipbuilding, the very subject of our deep dive.
Precisely. Quanzhou was renowned for producing the Fuchuan or Fujian ship, which was recognized as one of the 4 main types of Chinese vessels at the time. Known for its seaworthiness and cargo capacity perfect for the southern seas. This industry was absolutely foundational to Quanzhou's global reach, enabling the vast network of trade routes that defined its prosperity.
Can you give us a sense of just how far these routes extended? Where were these Fujian ships going?
The far-reaching navigation routes from Quanzhou are remarkably well documented in late Song and Yuan sailing manuals and records. They reveal a truly globalized world even back then. These routes crisscross the South China Sea to places like Vietnam, Sumatra, Java, Borneo.
Key Southeast Asian hub.
Exactly. Then they pass through the critical Straits of Malacca, heading towards India, the Persian Gulf, and even extending all the way down the East African coast, specifically mentioning places equivalent to modern Somalia and Tanzania.
Wow.
And other routes also connected Quanzhou north and east to the Philippines, Korea, and Japan. It established Quanzhou as a truly global nexus for goods, ideas, and people.
The sheer volume and organization of this overseas trade must have been astonishing for the time.
It really was. Historical documents reflect a clear division in how trade was managed. You had government trade, which involved things like accepting tribute from foreign states and exchanging official gifts, and then you had private trade.
How did private trade work?
It was licensed and supervised by the Shibo-Si, the Department of Maritime Trade. This state oversight ensured a degree of order and collected revenue while still encouraging private enterprise.
So a blend of state control and private initiative.
Yes. And what's fascinating here is that while government trade might have been larger in volume for certain prestige goods, private traders were far more numerous and operated with much greater frequency. They were really driving the day-to-day commerce.
Were there restrictions?
There were some. Certain highly valuable commodities like tortoiseshell, rhinoceros horn, and ivory were effectively state monopolies. Private merchants could trade in them, but they usually had to sell an agreed proportion of those specific goods to the state at fixed prices. But for most goods, trade was relatively open, though regulated.
And the volume. Marco Polo's comment about pepper comes to mind.
Exactly. Marco Polo famously recorded, maybe with a bit of exaggeration, but the point stands that the volume of pepper imported into Quanzhou was 100 times that sent from Alexandria to the whole of Europe.
100 times?
Even if it's hyperbole, that single detail dramatically recalibrates our understanding of medieval global trade flows. It suggests the sheer scale of demand in China and the capacity of its maritime network. You have to wonder what logistical and administrative feats must have been necessary to handle such an immense volume of goods coming in and going out.
It puts Quanzhou's importance into truly astounding perspective. And the variety of goods traded tells us so much about demand and supply across continents back then.
Indeed. Over 330 different types of goods are documented as being imported into Quanzhou. Think high-value items like frankincense, eaglewood, cloves, musk, sandalwood, ivory. Meanwhile, more than 60 types of goods were exported from Quanzhou, everything from exquisite lacquerware and silk fabrics to tea, lychees, and various manufactured goods of bronze, iron, gold, silver, tin, and lead.
And ceramics, of course.
And especially ceramics. Chinese ceramics, sourced from those Song or Yuan kilns in the Quanzhou region, have been found archaeologically as far afield as the Philippines, Japan, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, even Egypt and East Africa. It just underscores the incredible reach of this mercantile empire based in southern China.
This vibrant trade network really sets the stage perfectly for our second shipwreck, the Bai Jiao 1, which offers a complementary but different kind of story.
Precisely. Let's shift our focus now to the Bai Jiao 1 wreck site. It's a veritable ceramic treasure trove, really. This wreck was discovered near Dinghai, which is also in Fujian province, not too far from Fuzhou. Like Quanzhou, it was found during shell dredging operations, this time in the late 1970s.
And it became another joint project.
Yes, it subsequently became the subject of that joint China-Australia excavation effort we mentioned, with work carried out in 1990 and again in 1995.
And Dinghai itself, the location, had its own strategic significance, didn't it? It wasn't just any spot on the coast.
It absolutely did. Dinghai held significant strategic importance historically. It served as a critical defense point and a gateway to the larger inland city of Fuzhou, which was a major administrative center. It was also a crucial transfer station for goods moving between riverine transport systems and ocean-going vessels.
A transit hub.
Exactly. And evidence of a Ming Dynasty castle there, and even a Japanese merchant graveyard site nearby, underscores its role over centuries as a zone of defense against invasions, especially piracy, and also as a dynamic hub for international exchange. It was a place where cultures met and goods moved, making any shipwrecks found there potentially very valuable historically.
The site description in the report reveals a dynamic and pretty challenging environment for the archaeologists working there.
Oh, very much so. It's heavily impacted by environmental factors like seasonal typhoons, which are common in the region, and strong tidal currents. The report mentions currents sometimes reaching a meter per second. That makes diving and archaeological work incredibly challenging, especially with visibility varying greatly. This isn't some calm, protected harbor. It's quite an exposed, potentially dangerous stretch of coastline.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture of the wrecking event itself, how did the ship likely sink?
Well, the site's position, located just below a steeply sloping underwater reef known as the Bai Jiao reefs, strongly suggests the ship struck these reefs, probably during a violent storm. It might have been anchored or docked nearby in Dinghai Bay and got caught unprepared when severe weather blew in.
A common maritime disaster scenario.
Sadly, yes. And the later discovery of another wreck, Bai Jiao 2, a Ming Dynasty vessel found in the same area, unfortunately confirms that this was indeed a notorious and dangerous stretch of coastline for shipping over a long period, a real ship trap.
The site formation itself is quite telling, too, even with the disturbances from dredging over the years.
That's right. While shell dredging clearly disturbed the upper layers of the site over the centuries, the archaeologists found a surprising coherence in some of the concreted artifacts, and significantly, stacks of ceramic bowls still packed as they were in the hold.
So the cargo didn't just scatter everywhere immediately.
It seems not entirely. This suggests the ship's hull actually maintained some structural integrity for a period after sinking. It effectively trapped and protected a large part of its cargo before the wooden structure fully disintegrated over time. This gives us a remarkably detailed snapshot of what it was carrying, even if the ship's structure itself wasn't preserved like the Quanzhou vessel.
So unlike the detailed structural blueprint we got from the Quanzhou ship, the Bai Jiao 1, likely due to maybe a more violent wrecking event and those subsequent disturbances, largely offers us insights through its cargo and the site's location, rather than preserving unique shipbuilding details.
Precisely. The focus here really shifts to the incredible economic story told by its cargo, and that cargo was overwhelmingly ceramics, offering a different but equally fascinating lens into Song Dynasty trade and production.
What kind of ceramics did they find? What was the main type?
The dominant find, by a huge margin, was black glazed bowls. They made up an astonishing 87.68% of all the recovered ceramic material, thousands of them.
Wow. What were they like?
These were the famed tuhaozan, or rabbit's fur, glazed stoneware bowls. They were typically quite small, around 4 to 5 centimeters high and 10-11 centimeters wide across the rim, characterized by their distinct brown or black glaze, often with subtle silvery or russet streaks resembling rabbit's fur, hence the name. They also typically had an unglazed foot ring, which was a common firing technique to prevent them sticking to the kiln shelf.
Were they all identical, though? Or were there variations?
There were definitely variations. The archaeologists identified 3 main types based on subtle differences in shape. Type 1 had a rim that turned slightly outwards and a gracefully curved belly profile. Type 2 had a more vertical rim or neck section. And Type 3 had a rim slightly turned outwards but without an obvious curve to the belly. These subtle distinctions likely reflect production from different workshops or slight evolutions in style over time.
Their cultural significance sounds immense.
Yeah.
These weren't just everyday bowls for eating rice, were they?
Oh, far from it. These black glazed bowls were highly popular and prized tea bowls during the Song and Yuan dynasties. They were specifically used in a cultural practice called ducha, which were essentially tea competitions or tastings.
Tea competitions?
Yes. In these competitions, the aesthetic quality of the whisked tea froth was paramount, and the dark, lustrous black glaze of these bowls provided a beautiful contrast to the vibrant green tea foam, really enhancing the visual experience for the connoisseurs. It was all about appreciating the tea with multiple senses.
Fascinating. And they were popular elsewhere, too.
Hugely popular, especially in Japan. They were known there as tenmoku bowls and became highly sought after for the Japanese tea ceremony. It's well documented that Japanese monks and potters specifically traveled to Fujian during this period to learn the techniques for manufacturing these specific types of bowls. It shows a really deep cultural exchange driven by the shared pursuit of aesthetic and perhaps spiritual perfection in the art of tea.
Beyond the dominant black bowls, what other ceramics were found on Bai Jiao 1?
There were also quantities of light green glazed celadon bowls classified as celadon A. These were characterized by a thinner glaze compared to some other celadons and often had unglazed firing marks on the inside base from being stacked rim to rim or base to base in the kiln. As well as the bowls, they found robust stoneware storage jars, likely used for provisions or perhaps other trade goods.
And wasn't there a particularly interesting find on one of the black bowls? A mark.
Yes. This is one of those details that really grabs your attention. On the base of one of the black glazed bowls, they found an inscribed potter's mark, the Chinese character Wang, which means king or could be a surname.
What's the significance of that?
It's incredibly significant because finding maker's marks from this period is relatively rare, especially on everyday wares. It offers us a rare, tangible insight into workshop practices, maybe quality control, or possibly even a nascent form of branding in ancient ceramic production. It really humanizes the process, doesn't it? Giving us a hint of the individual artisans or workshops behind these mass-produced, yet clearly valued items.
That's a fantastic detail. It raises an important question, though. Where were all these ceramics actually made? With so many kilns known in Fujian, how do you pinpoint their origin?
That's a challenge often faced in ceramic archaeology. In this case, chemical analysis of the pottery sherds provided a crucial clue. The analysis revealed that the Bai Jiao 1 ceramics, both the blackware and the celadon, lack significant traces of titanium oxide.
And why is that important?
Because titanium oxide is a characteristic component of the clays used in the known kiln sites near Fuzhou, which is relatively close to Dinghai. The absence of it strongly suggests that the Bai Jiao 1 cargo didn't come from those nearby Fuzhou kilns. Instead, the chemical signature points towards unidentified kilns located further north within Fujian province. This specific production site, or sites, remains a mystery to this day.
So the ship might have picked up its cargo further up the coast?
That seems likely. However, the nearby Puku kiln is considered a potential source for some of the celadon ware found, indicating perhaps a regional rather than a single highly localized origin for the ship's cargo. It might have stopped at several points.
And what do these finds, combined with knowledge of the kilns, tell us about the actual manufacturing process? How are these ceramics produced on such a grand scale?
They employed some pretty sophisticated technologies for the time. We know from excavating kiln sites in Fujian that they used stepped or dragon kilns. These were massive, multi-chambered structures, often built into hillsides, allowing for incredibly efficient, high-volume firing using a draft effect.
What about fuel and protection during fire?
Fuel was a major consideration, with firewood being the primary source in the south, though coal was used more in northern China. To protect the wares from direct flame, ash, and impurities during firing, potters used saggers. These are protective clay containers, basically boxes, that the pots were placed inside before going into the kiln.
And stacking.
Yes, evidence from the archaeological record, like those unglazed firing rings found inside the Bai Jiao 1 bowls, shows us their clever stacking methods. They would stack bowls rim to rim or base to base, often with small clay separators, to maximize the usable space within the kiln and the saggers. It's a glimpse into a highly organized, almost proto-industrial production system geared towards mass export.
Beyond the dominant ceramics, were there any other artifacts recovered from Bai Jiao 1 that provided additional clues about the ship itself or its crew?
Other artifacts were fewer in number compared to the ceramics, but still offered important details. A timber sample recovered from the wreck, identified as either pine or yew, provided a radiocarbon date consistent with the Songyun dating of the ceramic types, helping to confirm the vessel's age.
Anything else?
Yes. Fragments of bamboo rope were also recovered, indicating the common use of natural plant fibers for rigging, lashing cargo, or other onboard tasks. And several stone weights were found. These could possibly have been used as net weights if the crew engaged in fishing, or perhaps more likely as sounding weights, heavy stones attached to a line, lowered to gauge water depth, which would have been crucial navigational tools in coastal waters. These small details help round out our understanding of the vessel and its operations.
So bringing these two wreck sites in the broader context together, what does all this archaeological evidence really tell us about the bigger picture of Chinese maritime history? Let's try to connect these ancient technologies and the trade networks.
Well, it's clear that Chinese ocean-going vessels had a significant presence in the South China Sea and beyond from quite early on. But the Song Dynasty, the period of the Quanzhou ship and likely the Bai Jiao 1 cargo, truly played a pivotal role. They were the ones who established an impressive, state-sponsored, ocean-going navy and actively encouraged overseas trade as a matter of policy. This really shifted China's focus outward in a major way.
More so than before.
Yes, before the Song period, much of the large-scale trans-Asiatic maritime trade was often dominated by Southeast Asian shippers, like the Srivijayans or Arab and Persian merchantmen. The Song era marked a definitive turning point, where Chinese shipbuilding technology and mercantile activity really came to the forefront in these waters.
This leads us back to that idea, I think Pierre-Yves Manguin's theory, of a hybrid shipbuilding tradition emerging, blending Chinese and Southeast Asian styles. And it's not just the Quanzhou ship. Another major discovery, the Shinan ship, which wrecked off the coast of Korea carrying a huge cargo of Chinese ceramics, also provides crucial evidence. Both seem to be prime examples of this distinct South China Sea tradition.
That's right. What's fascinating here is that these vessels, Quanzhou and Shinan, share several common characteristics that seem to define this regional tradition. They both have V-shaped hulls, well-suited for open water sailing. They both feature bulkheads with adjacent frames, that specific structural innovation we discussed. Both used multi-layered planking for strength and water tightness. And they had specific designs for their mast steps, likely optimized for the types of rigs they carried, probably lug sails.
So these shared features set them apart.
Yes, they suggest a distinctive regional approach to shipbuilding, probably born from centuries of interaction, exchange of ideas, and adaptation to the specific demands of navigating and trading in the South China Sea and Indian Ocean. A true innovation likely born from cross-cultural interaction and maritime necessity.
And were there key distinctions even within that South China Sea tradition, or compared to other Southeast Asian methods?
Yes, there were subtle but important differences. The South China Sea tradition, as seen in the Quanzhou and Shinan ships, often featured that skew nailing we talked about, and the sophisticated use of iron brackets, guazhu, and cramps for fastening. In contrast, many other Southeast Asian vessels from around the same period or earlier frequently used edge-doweled planks, a technique where wooden pegs were inserted into the edges of planks to join them, and they largely lacked iron fasteners. They also generally didn't use those refined, rabbeted seams found on the Quanzhou ship.
What does that suggest?
These differences likely suggest regional preferences in materials, specific construction methods passed down through generations, and perhaps variations in the availability or mastery of metalworking technology across the vast region.
This raises an important, perhaps slightly sobering question about the long-term trajectory of this incredible maritime innovation. Because despite all this ingenuity, this advanced South China Sea tradition of shipbuilding seems to have declined, maybe even disappeared after a certain point.
It did, tragically. The decline and eventual near disappearance of these types of large ocean-going traditional vessels, like those of the South China Sea tradition exemplified by Quanzhou and Shannon, seems tragically linked to the impact of politics back in China. Specifically, the rise of a powerful Confucian anti-maritime faction at the imperial court and the subsequent implementation of the Ming Ban, the sea bans during the Ming Dynasty.
The Ming bans, what did they entail?
These policies led to a drastic reduction, almost a dismantling of the official Chinese Navy, and severely curtailed private overseas trade for long periods.
So what were the motivations behind this Ming ban, this turning inward? And what were its immediate and long-term consequences for China and its maritime future?
Well, the Ming Ban, or sea ban policy, which was enforced intermittently but often quite strictly, was primarily driven by a resurgence of conservative Confucian ideology within the ruling elite. They increasingly viewed extensive overseas trade and contact as a source of social disruption, corruption, and dangerous foreign influence, something seen as a threat to agrarian stability and imperial control.
A reaction against the previous dynasty, too.
Partly, yes. After the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty, which had been very outward-looking and reliant on maritime trade, the new Ming rulers sought to reestablish what they saw as a pure Han Chinese social and political order. This included trying to isolate the country to prevent external threats, particularly the persistent problem of wokou Japanese and Chinese pirates who preyed relentlessly on coastal communities and trade.
So the immediate consequence was?
The immediate consequence was the deliberate dismantling of much of China's formidable ocean-going navy. The shocking cessation of the grand state-sponsored voyages like those led by the Admiral Zheng He in the early 15th century, and severe restrictions placed on private maritime trade and shipbuilding. All these advanced shipbuilding techniques, the navigational knowledge, the vast global networks we've been discussing, they began to wither from lack of use and official discouragement.
That's a powerful thought to consider. This political shift fundamentally altered the course of Chinese maritime development, potentially leading to the loss, or at least the marginalization, of an advanced shipbuilding tradition that clearly had global reach and capability. It's almost as if they pulled the plug on their own maritime prowess.
Indeed. It's a really stark reminder that even the most advanced technological and commercial developments can be stifled, even reversed, by shifting political winds and ideological priorities. The Ming bans essentially forced China for centuries to turn largely inward, arguably abandoning a maritime legacy that had, in the Song and Yuan periods, been at the very forefront of global innovation and exploration.
And the long-term impact.
Well, this had profound implications, not just for China's own economic and technological development trajectory, but also arguably for the global balance of power. It created a vacuum in the Asian seas that eventually European maritime powers were able to exploit centuries later.
And with that rather profound thought, we bring this deep dive into maritime archaeology in the People's Republic of China to a close.
It's been quite a journey. We've uncovered the incredible technological sophistication of Song Dynasty shipbuilding, seen through the intricate details of the Quanzhou ship, from its multi-part keel and unique rabbeted planking to those fascinating good luck charms embedded right within its structure. It's a story of independent innovation and real engineering prowess.
And we've explored the bustling global trade routes that radiated from Quanzhou, Tung Harbor, a true medieval powerhouse connecting continents. The Bai Jiao shipwreck, with its astonishing cargo of thousands of rabbit's fur glazed tea-bowls, provided such vivid details about the daily commerce, the artistic craftsmanship, and the deep cultural exchange that defined life and trade centuries ago.
These archaeological deep dives, they truly transform our understanding of history, don't they? They move us beyond just the textual accounts, which are valuable but incomplete, to the tangible, undeniable evidence of human ingenuity, interconnectedness, and the complex interplay of engineering, culture, belief, and trade. They remind us that the past is always richer, more complex, and often more surprising than we might imagine.
So, as you go about your day, here's something to mull over, a provocative thought. Considering the clear ingenuity and the global reach demonstrated by Song and Yuan dynasty maritime trade and technology, what might ancient China's naval architecture and maritime influence have achieved if those later political policies hadn't curtailed its development? How might that have reshaped global history as we know it, perhaps leading to a very different world map of influence, exploration, and exchange?
Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.
We hope you've enjoyed our journey into China's rich and often surprising maritime past. We'll see you next time.